There's a kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful. It doesn't soothe, doesn't comfort. It just presses down on you until you learn how to breathe around it. That was the quiet I grew up in. Not the warm, end-of-day hush of a family reading in the living room, not the gentle stillness after shared laughter. No, this was the kind of silence that made you feel like a faint echo in your own home. My name is Cynthia White, and I'm 20 years old. For most of my life, I believed that quiet was my fault. That if I worked harder, tried more, shined brighter, maybe the silence would break. I'm the middle child, which in my house was just another way of saying unnecessary. My older sister, Lena, was the golden one. Cheer captain, honor student, center of every holiday photo. She was the sun my parents orbited around. My younger brother, Aaron, was the baby, the exception, the one forgiven before he even apologized. And me? I was the filler between their lives, not star, not baby, just there. When I was younger, I tried to earn sound in that house. I thought that if I brought home straight A's, my mom might look up. If I kept my room spotless, maybe my dad would say, "Good job, kiddo." If I helped without being asked, maybe someone would notice the effort. But the only time the house warmed was when it benefited someone else. Lena got flowers for making varsity cheer, a huge bouquet that swallowed the kitchen table. Aaron got a brand new Xbox for raising his grades from a C- to a C+. Meanwhile, I got silence, a murmured okay at most. Birthdays were the truest test. Some years, I got a rushed card signed with cramped handwriting, as if someone scribbled it in the car before walking inside. Sometimes I got a shared cake, my candle blown out after Lena announced her new trophies, or Aaron bragged about soccer goals. But when I turned 16, even that thin thread snapped. No card, no cake, no happy birthday. Nothing. Later that week, Mom said it slipped her mind. Dad nodded absently, agreeing like he was approving a work memo instead of acknowledging he'd forgotten his own daughter. I laughed it off in front of them, then buried my face in my pillow that night, trying to swallow the humiliation of being completely forgettable. It wasn't loud neglect, no screaming, no slamming doors, no punishments, just consistent suffocating indifference. I cooked my own meals by 13, washed my own clothes, took the bus everywhere. My life ran parallel to theirs, never overlapping. One winter afternoon, I stood at a bus stop watching a mother adjust her son's scarf. She fussed. He complained. They laughed. Something sharp twisted in my chest. That wasn't jealousy. It was grief for something I never had. At some point, a thought settled into me, cold and certain. If I disappeared, days would pass before anyone noticed. And instead of breaking me, it made me curious. So when I turned 18, I ran the experiment. I didn't mention my birthday. No hints, no expectations. Breakfast came and went. Mom lost her keys. Lena panicked about a stain on her cheer jacket. Dad scrolled through emails. Aaron whined for a ride to practice. No one said a word. Not at breakfast, not at dinner, not in passing, not by mistake. I sat through the whole day trying to decide which felt worse, that they didn't know or that they might have known and simply didn't care. That night I packed a bag. A simple backpack, a hoodie, a few shirts, jeans, deodorant, and the envelope of cash I'd saved from working part-time at a bookstore. No note, no confrontation, no dramatic exit. I opened the front door quietly and slipped out. No one called that night, or the next day, or the next week. For a while I checked my phone often, half hoping, half dreading seeing a family member's name. But all I got were spam emails and discount codes. They genuinely didn't notice I was gone. And instead of destroying me, it liberated me. Because if they could lose me that easily, then I'd never really belonged there. Through a mutual friend, I found a roommate, a guy named Raphael, who needed help with rent. His tiny apartment outside the city smelled like a mix of old pizza and cheap cleaner. The floors creaked. The ceiling had water stains shaped like continents. The heater coughed to life each night like it was dying. I loved it immediately. For the first time in my life, silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like space. I got a job at a diner 2 blocks away with sticky menus and a flickering neon sign. Morning shifts, serving grumpy regulars and refilling coffee. Evening shifts, cooking when someone called out. It was chaotic, greasy, loud, and honest. If I messed up, I fixed it. If I worked hard, I earned more. No comparing me to Lena. No asking if Aaron needed help. No measuring my worth against someone else's achievements. Just show up, do your job, don't leave a mess. I could do that. In the fall, I enrolled in community college. Financial aid covered part of the cost. The rest came from tips and eating canned soup more often than I'd ever planned. My feet hurt constantly. My sleep schedule was a joke. But beneath all that exhaustion was something warm and steady. Purpose. I didn't talk about my family. When classmates asked, I just shrugged and said, "We don't talk." People assumed I'd aged out of foster care or been kicked out, letting them think that was easier than explaining the truth, that I had a family who simply forgot I existed. Sometimes a random moment, a dad helping his daughter with groceries, a mom texting her son to come home safe, would hit me like a wave. But I learned to breathe through it, because every passing month without a call confirmed what I already knew. I didn't leave them, they let me go. By 20, I had an associate's degree, a tech support job in the university library, and a few freelance gigs. The invisible girl became the person others relied on when they needed help. Still, not a single holiday greeting, no birthday texts, no "how are you?" Not even a misplaced butt dial. Just silence. The same silence I grew up in, except now it belonged to me. I truly believed that would last forever. I was wrong. Starting over didn't feel like a bold decision. It felt like survival. By the time I transferred to the four-year university at 20, my life had reshaped itself into something steady, even if it wasn't glamorous. I had routines now, small rituals that grounded me in ways my childhood never did. The tech support job at the campus library paid decently, especially when paired with my diner shifts. Students wandered in with laptops held together by hope and loose screws, and I'd fix what I could. Sometimes they thanked me like I'd performed a miracle, and every time it caught me off guard. Being appreciated was still new. Most days, I ate lunch behind the library, sitting on the little concrete ledge under the one stubborn tree that clung to its leaves longer than the others. I'd watch groups of friends laughing, complaining about assignments, trading food. Simple things that felt impossibly warm. I still kept my distance, not intentionally, more out of habit, like I feared taking up space I wasn't sure I deserved. But somehow people found me anyway. Mel, with her ever-present iced coffee, dragging me into conversations about her podcast topics. Drew, handing me broken headphones or chargers just to see if I could fix them with duct tape and sheer will. A handful of classmates who asked me to study with them, then eventually treated me like I was part of their group. The wild part, they checked in on me. Text me when you get home. Did you eat today? Take my jacket, it's cold. Tiny things, normal things, but they hit me harder than any grand gesture. I didn't tell them about Lena or Aaron or my parents. Whenever people asked about my family, I'd give the same quiet answer. We're not close. They never pushed. They never asked why. They never assumed it was my fault. Letting them think whatever they wanted felt easier than explaining that level of emptiness. And honestly, I didn't want pity. I wanted peace. For 2 years, I had it. 2 years without hearing my own last name said in the voice of someone who once should have cared. Then one night, while I was packing up my backpack in the library, my phone buzzed. I assumed it was one of my classmates asking about the homework. But when I flipped it over, my body froze. Dad Mobile. The name looked foreign, as if it belonged to someone else's phone. Like my screen had glitched. I stared at it as it rang, buzzing steadily, like it had the right to shake space in my life again. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, not yet, but because shock had glued me in place. It rang until it stopped. I kept staring at the dark screen long after it went silent. My heart wasn't racing. It wasn't breaking. It was quiet, suspiciously quiet. Then the voicemail notification popped up. I sat there debating whether to listen. A part of me wanted to delete it without a second thought, but another part, the part that had waited silently for 16 years for even a crumb of affection, clicked play. His voice crackled through the speaker. "Hey, it's me. Dad, we were just wondering how you've been. You haven't been around in a while. Mom's been asking. Anyway, call us back. All right." I didn't know whether to laugh or drop the phone. Haven't been around in a while? 2 years. Not 2 weeks. Not 2 months. 2 years of nothing. From them, anyway. The message wasn't emotional. It wasn't shocked or relieved. It sounded like someone making a required phone call. Someone checking an item off a to-do list. Not a father calling a daughter he didn't realize had disappeared from the house for months. There was no apology. No acknowledgement of forgetting my birthday. No, "we're sorry we didn't reach out." Just casual. Detached. As if I'd been the one who wandered off without saying anything. But I didn't respond. Because something about that voicemail felt wrong. Off. like a smile that doesn't reach the eyes. 2 days later, my phone buzzed again. A text from Lena. Dad's been trying to get in touch. You should call him. It's important. No details, no warmth, just an order disguised as concern. I clicked on her profile out of instinct. Her feed was all polished smiles, matching outfits with Mom and Aaron on Christmas morning, group photos at family barbecues, my parents beaming as they posed with her new Cheer Squad alumni friends. Not a single trace that a middle daughter ever existed. They had space for coordinated outfits, for holiday dinners, for celebrations, just not for me. And now suddenly, I was a loose thread they needed to pull? I didn't respond. Instead, I watched the way my hands trembled, not with fear, but with a slow, rising anger I didn't know I was capable of. Because it wasn't a reunion they wanted. No one suddenly missed me. They needed something. And I wasn't naive enough anymore to believe otherwise. Another 2 days passed before my dad tried again, this time sending a blurry photo of the family house, the one I'd walked out of at 18. Probably an attempt to stir nostalgia, to remind me of home. I didn't open it, I deleted it. If they wanted to reach me out of love, they would have noticed I was gone long before 2 years had passed. So I waited, not for them, but for the truth. Because I knew this was only the beginning, and whatever important thing they needed had nothing to do with me as a daughter. It took me a full week before I replied. Not because I needed time to think. I already knew exactly where I stood. But I wanted to see how far they'd go. How many calls, how many vague, we just wanted to talk messages they'd send before they finally said the one thing that mattered. An apology. It never came. Instead, the pattern was painfully familiar. Dad called again. Then Lena texted again. Short, clipped, emotionless. Then, nothing. A silence that felt less like concern and more like strategy. And finally, I sent one message. I can meet this Friday, 1 hour, neutral place. Dad replied almost instantly, like he'd been waiting with the phone in his hand. We chose a small cafe halfway between campus and the old neighborhood. Neutral ground, public, quiet, no space for dramatics or emotional ambushes. Friday came faster than I expected. I showed up early and sat near the window. I kept my earbuds in until the moment he walked through the door. I almost didn't recognize him at first. Dad looked older, more fragile than I remembered, like someone had taken the man I grew up with and erased color around the edges. He spotted me, hesitated, then forced a small smile. "Cynthia," he said, sliding awkwardly into the chair across from me. "You look good." I nodded, offering nothing. I wanted him to speak first, to fill the silence the way I used to try. He cleared his throat, ordered a coffee he didn't actually want. He never drank it black. Then the performance began. "It's been a while," he said, eyes darting everywhere but mine. "We were surprised when you left. You didn't say anything." That word, surprised, hit me like a slap. Surprised? I left that house like a ghost, and no one noticed until 2 years later? He saw something flicker in my expression because he quickly added, "We thought you were staying with a friend." Then weeks passed, and, well, it became complicated. Complicated. That was their excuse? That finding me was inconvenient? That reaching out required too much effort? He kept talking about how the house didn't feel the same, about how Lena was busy but asked about me sometimes, about how Aaron missed me in his own way. Every sentence was a fragile bridge built on nothing. None of it held weight. And for every minute he spoke, the absence of one thing grew louder. He didn't apologize. There was no acknowledgement of the 16 missed birthdays before that. No admission of years of silence or neglect. No recognition that I could have died in that apartment and no one in my family would have known. Finally, I asked the only question that mattered. "Why now?" He blinked, his jaw tightened. "What do you mean?" he asked, pretending he didn't understand. "Why reach out after 2 years?" I repeated. "What changed?" Dad hesitated, and in that pause, everything snapped into focus. This wasn't about me. It was about something they needed. He exhaled slowly. "Your grandmother passed." There it was. A cold, heavy truth dropped onto the table between us. "Your mom's been struggling," he continued. "The whole family has. We're trying to reconnect." I leaned back in my chair, not shocked, not hurt, just confirmed. They hadn't realized I was gone because they missed me. They'd realized because something else had fallen apart, and they needed the forgotten daughter to step back into the role she was always expected to fill. The glue, the filler child, the one who didn't need anything and never caused trouble. He folded his hands like he was delivering some noble confession. "We thought," he swallowed, "we thought maybe you'd come home, help out. You know how things get when there's tension." So that was it. My grandmother was gone. The estate was probably in flux. The family was fracturing. And suddenly, the daughter who'd slipped through the cracks was an asset again. Not a person, a tool. I stood up slowly. My chair barely made a sound. "I'm sorry about Grandma," I said, and I meant it. "But I'm not the one you call when things fall apart. Not anymore." Dad's face went slack, somewhere between confusion and offended pride. "Cynthia, wait!" "You didn't check on me when I left," I said quietly. "You didn't ask if I was safe. You didn't even notice I was gone. So no, I'm not here for a reunion. I'm here to make things clear." I slipped on my jacket without breaking eye contact. I moved on. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something meaningful, something fatherly, something that would erase the truth. But nothing came out, because there was nothing he could say. I walked out of that cafe without looking back. Not out of anger, not out of spite. Just self-respect. Something I'd earned on my own. That night, Dad called again. I let it ring. Then came a text. "We should have handled things differently. Mom wants to see you too." Of course she did. Now that things were crumbling. Now that they needed someone to absorb the fallout. But the message said everything I needed to know. Still no apology. Still no acknowledgement. Just vague, soft-edged responsibility that blamed no one and fixed nothing. I didn't respond, not yet. I needed time not to think, but to breathe. Because setting a boundary takes 5 minutes. But living with it? That's where the real strength is born. I didn't respond to my father's message that night. Not because I was conflicted, not because I needed to calm down, but because I recognized the pattern now, clearer than ever. They weren't reaching out from love, they were reaching out from loss. Someone died, something cracked, and they needed the child who never made noise, the one who always adapted, always helped, always folded herself small, to step back into place and hold the family structure together again. But I wasn't that girl anymore. The next morning I turned off my phone, not for self-protection, but for peace. A kind of peace I had never experienced growing up. I made myself breakfast. Not cereal and cold leftovers like at home, but an actual meal. Eggs, toast, the cheap fruit from the campus grocery store. The sunlight through my apartment window hit the table in a way that made the whole room feel safe. Safe in a way my childhood kitchen never was. For 2 days, I let the world go silent. My world, my choice this time. I cleaned the apartment, did laundry, listened to music without headphones for the first time in years, cooked dinner for Raphael and me. Something simple but warm, steaming bowls of noodles with vegetables, and we ate while watching a cheesy movie we both pretended to hate. And the thing was, the silence in that apartment didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like ownership. I spent most of the weekend working on a freelance project. A nonprofit needed help building their donor tracking dashboard. A professor had recommended me, said I was reliable, steady, the kind of student who delivers. I stared at those words in the email for a long time, letting them settle into places in me that had never been filled. Reliable, steady, someone who delivers. It was a kind of validation I'd never gotten from the people who were supposed to give it freely. By Sunday night, I'd finished the project, cooked myself dinner, and sat at my small, thrifted desk feeling full, not from food, but from the knowledge that I had built something with my own hands. I didn't need a family to define me. I didn't need anyone to see me for me to exist. Still, the next morning, I turned my phone back on. It lit up instantly. 5 missed calls, 2 new voicemails, 3 texts from Dad, 2 from Lena, not one from Mom. I wasn't surprised. I read Lena's first. "Dad is hurt. You didn't have to be so cold." Cold. The word made something shift inside me. Slow, simmering disbelief mixing with an old, familiar ache. I had spent my entire childhood being warm, pliable, invisible for that family. I bent myself into the shape they needed, over and over. I was quiet. I was helpful. I never complained, never asked for anything, never demanded attention. And now, the moment I stopped making their lives easier, I was cold. I didn't respond. Instead, I finally wrote one message. Just one. "I hope you and Mom are well. I've built a life I'm proud of. I'm not interested in reopening old wounds. Please respect that." No anger, no accusations, just truth. I reread it twice. Not because I doubted myself, but because it felt surreal to send something so honest without apology attached. Then I hit send. I turned off my phone again. Not because I wanted to avoid the fallout, but because I didn't need to hear their attempts to twist my boundary into cruelty. For the rest of the day, I moved through my routine with a kind of lightness I couldn't name. I fixed a laptop a freshman spilled soda on, worked a few hours at the diner, talked with Mel about her podcast topic, The Myths of Perfect Families. For the first time, I almost laughed at the irony. That evening, I walked home under a soft drizzle. The air smelled like wet pavement and fried food from the street vendor on the corner. It was ordinary, unremarkable, but it felt like mine. Late that night, I sat by the small window above my desk, watching raindrops race each other down the glass. There was no yelling in the next room, no arguments in the hallway, no guilt-laced silence waiting behind every closed door. Just calm. Just me. I wasn't lonely. I wasn't empty. I was free. The next morning, there was no new message from Dad, no new text from Lena, no new calls. And for once, their silence didn't hurt. It healed. Weeks passed. No calls, no texts, no sudden appearances on campus, no dramatic emails begging for a conversation. Just silence. But this version of silence wasn't the kind that used to smother me in my childhood bedroom, that heavy, suffocating quiet that meant I didn't matter. This silence felt like a clean slate, warm, balanced, chosen. My life began to settle into something steady and real. Nothing glamorous, nothing cinematic, but honest. I had my tech support job at the library, my weekend diner shifts where the cooks teased me and the regulars always asked about my classes, my little apartment with creaking floors where Raphael and I shared leftover takeout and argued about who forgot to clean the microwave. My classmates who checked in, not because they needed anything, but because they cared. For the first time, my life wasn't shaped around being an afterthought. I wasn't filling a role someone assigned me. I wasn't shrinking to make room for someone else's spotlight. I wasn't performing. I was just living. And one of the most liberating realizations was this. I didn't hate them. Hate takes energy, the kind I spent years pouring into a family who never looked up to receive it. But now, there was nothing in me that ached for their approval anymore. No part of me craving a reunion or a dramatic, tear-filled apology scene. I wasn't waiting for closure. It had already happened, quietly, without fanfare. It happened in the decision not to answer the phone, in the moment I walked out of that cafe, in the text I sent that didn't beg for understanding, in the choice to not reopen wounds just because someone else realized too late that I was gone. Sometimes people asked, "Do you think you'll ever go back? Try again? Give them another chance?" The world loves the idea that family is everything, that blood excuses neglect, that you're supposed to keep forgiving, keep folding yourself small, keep knocking on doors that were never opened for you. But I always thought to myself, what if going back means returning to a place I had to escape from? What if it means shrinking again? What if it means being invisible in a house where everyone only speaks to each other in surface-level lines and unspoken tension? Going back would mean pretending the years in between never happened. And I promised myself I'd never do that again. I didn't talk about them much. A coworker or classmate might ask about my family, and I'd just say, "We're not in contact." Most people nodded. No prying, no judgment, just acceptance. It stunned me how simple it could be, how normal it was to be treated like my story didn't need to be defended. Occasionally, I'd get random messages from old neighbors or cousins. "Hey, hope you're doing well. Long time no talk. Miss seeing you around?" I answered when I felt like it, short, kind, detached. Because I wasn't orbiting their world anymore. I wasn't the forgotten daughter, lingering on the edges of someone else's narrative. I wasn't waiting for someone to look up and finally see me. I was grounded, rooted in my own space, my own life, my own worth. And that worth didn't come from them. It came from me. From working 2 jobs and earning every small victory. From building friendships that felt like family without the conditions and expectations. From people who said, "Text me when you get home," and actually meant it. From a roommate who saved me the last slice of cheap pizza because he knew I'd had a long shift. From professors who believed in me without needing a reason. Some nights, when the campus lights glowed softly through my window, I'd think about the version of me who once cried into her pillow because no one remembered her birthday. I'd think about 16-year-old Cynthia sitting at that dinner table pretending she didn't care. Or 18-year-old Cynthia slipping out the door with nothing but a backpack. And I'd whisper to her, "You were never the problem. You were just the one they didn't bother to see." She deserved better. I deserved better. And I gave that to myself. Maybe my family will always believe I walked away without cause. Maybe they'll tell themselves it came out of nowhere, that I was the one who abandoned them. But I know the truth. I didn't walk out to hurt anyone. I didn't leave to make a point. I didn't disappear to punish them. I left because I deserved more than being forgotten. And for the first time, I found it. Not in them, not in a reunion, not in some perfectly timed apology, but in myself, in my boundaries, in my quiet, in the life I built from scratch, and in the peace that came the moment I stopped waiting to be found.